Hi everyone, hope you're all well. So the first thing I want to say is if you have recently subscribed to this channel, thank you. I really appreciate it. I haven't checked my analytics very recently, but I'm going to soon, and I think I may be closer to 2,000 subscribers. I may even have surpassed that. I'm not sure. I haven't checked it recently, but that's a good milestone for me. So I will certainly welcome that. Um, Yeah, so thanks for that. And to long-term subscribers, thank you as well. Really, without people watching these videos, it would be pointless. So I really appreciate it. If you are new to the channel and you're maybe a little bit curious, maybe you've seen one or two of my videos, um, these aren't the flashiest videos out there. I don't have any special graphics or there's not really any content I show. It's really just me talking. But I try to cover things that I think are important, things that are going on in the UK, things that are going on around the world, topical issues. It's impossible to cover everything at once. Sometimes people say, Nathan, what are your thoughts on this, or can you do a video on that? Um, I would love to cover everything, but it's impossible because I'd have to really be doing this all the time, and there is space issues. When I upload a video, it takes up a bit of space, so um, that isn't really an option. But I try to get around as many issues as I can. Um, and yeah, so just thank you for your support. I cover things that can be sometimes provocative, thought provoking, but just generally things that I think are important. And in 99% of my videos, I leave the comment section open so people can have their opinion. Um, and I do occasional live streams. So if you're interested in that, I don't set any specific time for them. They're very spontaneous for the reason that people, sometimes live in different time zones. I have subscribers in different countries in Canada, Turkey, Brazil, as well as the UK, the United States. So I have to factor in the time zone thing as well. I can't have one specific time. I like to make it a little bit spontaneous. Right, so to get to the point with this video, this is one of those ones where it's not about a specific news issue, but it's a little bit more philosophical. And the issue is courage. I've always admired courage in people. I think it's a very good trait. Think of the Wizard of Oz, the Cowardly Lion who wants courage, right? It's it's something that's valued. It's something that in most cultures is seen as a good thing. Now, is there overlap with courage and bravery, or what's the difference? I would say it's a subtle difference. I would say there's definitely overlap. Perhaps the only real difference is with bravery, that's perhaps a little bit more spontaneous. For example, if you see a road accident and the car sort of goes on fire, a lot of people would have an instinctive reaction to go and help. And that's brave because it's potentially putting them at risk, but they're doing it to save or help another human being. So it's brave, but it's spontaneous. It's just like and they would often say it's not brave; it's an instinctive thing. Courage, on the other hand, perhaps refers more to a set of values, like being able to stand up for your conviction, for example, when it's unpopular. Perhaps that's courage. But I do think there's overlap, and I think the two terms are not totally different. Let me know your thoughts specifically on that, if you think there's a difference between courage and bravery. Um, this is something that actually requires a little bit of reflection because there's common sense things that anyone would say is brave, right? So risking your own safety to save another person is unquestionably brave or courageous, right? Um, and I should say in this video, I'm probably going to be overlapping the two terms myself because I don't have the definitive answer over what the difference is. So I will be overlapping a little bit. Um, but basically, there's some things that are a no-brainer. If someone risks their own safety to save someone else, that is brave. If someone is prepared to defy a dictator under an authoritarian regime, that is unquestionably brave. But then we get into the area of conviction, right? Standing up for one's conviction. And this gets actually a little bit more complex than it seems. Let me explain what I'm thinking of. Um, you could have someone standing up for the conviction, and that opinion is very unpopular, and they're risking popularity to stand up for it, and in some cases, even risking jail. But there's going to be Marmite views on what their actual conviction is. And some people might say, well, is it worth going to jail for that cause? You know, are you willing to? There's an expression, I think, die on the hill or something like that. I forget the precise expression, but basically, you know, are you willing to give your all for a cause that is deeply unpopular in the first place, and to many people is very wrong? I would give the example of just Stop Oil. Now, I have made no secret of my contempt for what they do, and by extension, I've no respect for them. I can't respect them. I can't respect what they do. And I'm not a believer in respect all opinions. I think that's nonsense. I don't respect all opinions. I don't respect the opinion that is it's okay for me to mess with people's lives because the planet is dying. That's to me, um, well, it's extreme. It's zealotry. Um, but you know, just stop oil activists are willing to go to prison. I think they are, and I don't want to just obsess on this one thing. I think they're selfish, arrogant, stubborn, um, sociopathic criminals, frankly. But I can't say that they're cards because it isn't cowardly by definition to know that you're putting yourself in a position where you could be reviled by the public, you know, where you could be forcefully dragged off the ground and thrown to the side, spat on, you know. Not that I have any sympathy with them; they brought it on themselves, but that's not it's not cowardly to put yourself in that position where you are going to be at risk of being reviled. And I suppose you could say that they stand up for their conviction. I just happen to think that they're really, really targeting the wrong people. Although I have to say they seem to have gone quiet recently, which is wonderful. I haven't seen them really do many stunts, at least in the UK recently. So maybe they finally got the hint that when you hurt the public, it's just bad policy. It's just a stupid strategy. But you know, you can look at examples throughout history where people have went to prison for some political cause. Now, again, this is murky territory because if you, you know, I come from Northern Ireland. Well, there were IRA fighters who went to prison and they went on hunger strike and stuff. To one side of the argument, they were freedom fighters who were willing to die, but to others, they were terrorists who had killed innocent people. And I definitely veer more towards the latter opinion because you know, it's an empirical fact that the IRA killed civilians. So did their loyalist counterparts, and yes, so did the British Army. But you know, that gets into the realm of, well, yeah, they were prepared to go to prison. Or let's look at South Africa. You know, the ANC um, decided that the pacifist approach wasn't working, so they went to more militant actions, including sabotage, bombings, and so on. And they were designated a terrorist group by the then apartheid government of South Africa. Yet, to most of the world, they had the moral argument because they were standing up for unoppressed people. Um, but this realm of one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter very much gets into this argument. Um, and by the way, I personally feel that you know, black South Africans had little other choice but to use those tactics, and the problem was um, that after the reconciliation period or after the end of apartheid, you know, I don't want to get into the whole micro analysis here of South African politics, but clearly South Africa is in a very bad way. Crime's out of control. It affects all South African citizens, white, black, and Asian. Um, and the ANC is extremely corrupt. So I think that sometimes, you know, you get these hopes. And when Mandela was released, there was all this hope of a better future, and it hasn't quite worked out that way, sadly. Um, but anyway, I derail. But, you know, I don't think anyone except, you know, pro-segregationist people, pro-apartheid people can't feel but to admire what Nelson Mandela went through. 27 years in prison, for his beliefs, and then he came out and what did he do? Did he call for revenge? No, he worked hard for reconciliation. That's why he was so admired. Now, Mandela didn't get everything right. He was too passive in condemning African dictators. Um, he definitely flirted with communism at points in his life. He was far too slow to condemn communist dictators. So Mandela wasn't perfect, but I admire him nevertheless. I think he was a remarkable man. Um, but anyone who's ever been in a position of discomfort, and what I mean by that is if you've ever been prepared to stand up for what you believe in, knowing it's unpopular, I respect that. Because I've been there, I know what it's like. I have sometimes been in a situation where I've been in some debate forum or even directly in a room, where there's been some sort of hustings or something. Not exactly that situation, but along those lines. And I've uttered an unpopular opinion. Now I know what it's like to sort of be ridiculed and be, you know, scorned for my viewpoint, and it takes tough skin, to be in a minority like that, to be in a minority of opinion. And I think it takes tough skin insofar as going through with it, standing up for your opinion. Truthfully, there are people out there who will always choose a comfort zone, and I don't necessarily respect that because always choosing the comfort zone might make someone shallow and not prepared to stand up for someone else. You know, think of Peter rebuking Christ 3 times. It's probably a pious example, but yeah. Um, so that's why I'm not overly a fan of always being in the comfort zone. Now, having said that, I'm not suggesting people put themselves in danger or people seek unnecessary conflict or something like that. But for example, if someone saw their friend standing up for their conviction and they were being attacked and ridiculed and they just said nothing, I'd question that. I would think that was a little bit shallow or even cowardly. But there are circumstances, where I wouldn't expect people to stick their neck out of the parapet because it really, I don't think anyone has a right to tell anyone else you have to face danger. Um, so, for example, in totalitarian regimes, it's all very well to say, oh, why aren't people rising up against the dictator? Well, the brave few that do, and those are people I'm thinking of incredibly brave. For example, dissidents in Russia or China or you name it, Burma, even states which are less overtly totalitarian, but maybe have some very sensitive issues that can elicit strong views. An example is Thailand and their notoriously harsh lèse majesté laws, which basically, if you don't know, it makes it illegal to insult the monarchy, and you can go to prison for a long time. Now, in that situation, they're not just risking long prison terms and harassment from the royal police. They're risking the hatred, the vitriol of Thai royalists, and those people. And I've experienced them. They can be very fanatical. They can be very very zealous in their support for the monarchy. Um, and there is no comparison with the situation here. I've seen people try to make that comparison. No, it's I've followed the situation in Thailand very closely. It is not comparable at all. So it's just to avoid comparison. But I suppose you could say, if you're a Republican in the UK and you'll go to some royalist institution and say, oh, Charles isn't the rightful king, I suppose it takes a degree of pluck because you're probably going to be booed and heckled, but that's about it. So there's bravery, which is taking a bit of pluck because you're going to be unpopular. But then there really is bravery where there's a very real risk of speaking out. It isn't just being unpopular, it's actually a risk of physical threat or prison. Um, and, people who are prepared to face those situations, in most circumstances, I have a lot of respect and admiration for that. I say most circumstances because, if they're hurting other people, if they're engaging in clear terrorist activity, i.e., targeting civilians. I can't respect that. You know, they could be willing to. I mean, some Islamists are willing to die or go to prison. That doesn't mean they're admirable people. They're despicable what they do. Um, because fanaticism can make people brave. This is another thing that's worth considering. Fanaticism can make people do technically brave things, but bravery doesn't always equate to morality. You know, someone could be technically brave because they're taking risk, facing danger, but for what end? Maybe to hurt people or to. So that's not black and white because it's taking risk for the wrong reasons. Um, and bravery does not always equate to ethics or morality. Courage, like you say, is maybe more ideological. Maybe I'm going to wrap this up soon, but I think we all need to test ourselves sometimes. Now, I'm not saying that people should be reckless. And, I am a believer that there's times you need to walk away. If you're debating with someone and it's getting heated and it's not going anywhere, and then it just starts getting into personal attacks, there really is no point continuing just for ego's sake. There really isn't. For your own mental health, you need to save that energy. I think Bruce Lee was asked once about one of his fans said, "What should I do if you're in this situation and you're outnumbered?" And Lee actually said, assuming this quote is right, you should run away. And the person was surprised, but that wasn't Lee being fake. That was Lee being pragmatic because yeah, it's courage and bravery takes many forms. I mean, you can have, for example, a boxer. Let me use this example, and I've used boxing analogies a few times. I believe by definition what boxers do is brave because they are risking their own health to go into a ring to face another man, knowing they will at some point in that fight get hurt, um, and they're doing it in front of thousands of people. Now that is something that I don't think a normal person can do that. That takes a real degree of mental toughness, physical toughness, and especially if it's outside their comfort zone, i.e., if they're fighting in the other guy's hometown because they're going to have a hostile crowd. Now, to me, that defines sporting courage. Really, that's why I have very short patience with fans who disrespect boxers. But that doesn't mean every boxer is an admirable character. There are boxers that have been involved in domestic violence, that hurt people weaker than themselves. Now they deserve nothing but scorn for that. Um, but I have a big problem with so-called fans calling fighters bums or tomato cans or runners. It's just respect what they do. You don't have to like the fighter, but respect at least what they do. That's all. I'm going to wrap this up. There's hopefully a lot of things for people to think about, but I think we should all test ourselves. If you're always going for the comfort zone, I think it's totally legitimate protecting your mental health. And if you know a situation is going to cause you anxiety, there's no point of doing it. But I do think it's important to sort of say to ourselves, can we speak up and do the right thing? For example, if someone more vulnerable than ourselves is being attacked, can we speak up? If we hear someone being ridiculed or rebuked and we agree with them and we think they're spot on, can we stand up for that person and say, actually, I agree with them? You know, so it's important to ask ourselves, can we put ourselves out of that comfort zone? I have tried to. I don't think it should be a habit. I mean, we shouldn't martyrize ourselves. There's no point of that. There's no point putting yourself into dangerous or reckless situations or stressful sort of debates that get out of hand because they're going to the gutter. And not every battle is worth it. Of course not. But I do believe that we need to sometimes push ourselves and test ourselves. I know I have tried to, and I know I have stuck my neck out the parapet at times. So I'm quite confident about that. I know I've done it because it's not so much about egoism towards others. It's more about living with yourself. Can you say to yourself, "Yes, I done that," or "No, I was scared to speak out." It's It's not easy, particularly when there's threats of legal implications or censorship or something. Um, and I'm not saying, just to be clear here, I'm not saying that just because someone has a minority opinion, they must be right. There's plenty of minority opinions that are unpopular with good reason. I mean, if someone was to come out and advocate for paedophiles, you know, that would be deeply unpopular and with good reason. But they might be technically standing up for the conviction, but it's a pretty disgusting conviction. It's a pretty abhorrent conviction to most people. So, you know, sticking your neck out the parapet doesn't always equate to morality. Anyway, I hope I've given people something to think about, but I just think it's important to sometimes get yourself out of the comfort zone, and definitely, speak up when you think something is wrong. Stand up for people. Those are good things, are good traits, and I think overall, courage and bravery are good things overall. It's just that sometimes there is black and white, or not black and white, rather, questions about what those things actually mean. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.